Afternoon. 12:07. Let's go ahead and get started. We can see other than
We don't have a quorum yet.
we don't need a quorum to move forward. We just won't approve the minutes. Yeah, I don't want to waste anybody's time. Everybody knows what time to be here. We've waited 7 minutes, so that's if they're late, they can jump in when they jump in. We could always move the approval of November minutes to the next meeting in October if we don't have if we don't end up getting a quorum. So yeah, so let's go ahead and move forward. So let's let's do roll call. It's gonna be simple.
Berkeley, Livermore, Newark, Stockton, Union City,
Yeah.
and Hayward.
Okay. Public comment. Do we have any public comments?
We don't have any public comment as of now.
Okay, so next is we're gonna hold on. Remind me to come back to approval of minutes if we do get a quorum later.
Sounds good.
So next is number 4, regulatory update, informational.
Yes. Share my screen in a minute.
Hello, board members and attendees for the meeting. This is John Newton with East Bay Community Energy. I'm going to be providing the regulatory update. Hopefully you can hear me. Very good. So Marisa, thank you very much for sharing the presentation. It's fairly high level and it's meant to provide kind of a quick discussion point if we'd like. If we could turn to the next page at your convenience.
Sorry, John, give us a quick minute because my screen will not share. Having some technical difficulties. I mean, it's not. Can you guys let me reshare and oh yeah. Okay. Okay, there we should be. Quick second. Do you want my help? No. I'm sure. There we go. Is that good?
Yeah, that's good. All right, great. So this is the page that we are mostly going to focus on for this section. So this regulatory update is providing some points about some of the key regulatory proceedings that East Bay typically engages in pretty significantly during the course of the year. On the left, you see some of the resource portfolio related regulatory proceedings at the California Public Utilities Commission. These tend to be the more significant proceedings that affect portfolio-based decision-making for LSEs under BUC's jurisdiction. So those are resource adequacy, the integrated resource planning proceeding, and then the renewable portfolio standard proceeding. I have a colleague with me, Michael Quiroz, who will provide some information about the other proceeding on this slide. So very simply, the resource adequacy proceeding is where the CPUC establishes or refines rules for the resource adequacy program. That program, the resource adequacy program, is meant to ensure that there are sufficient resources for the state, electric generating resources and other kinds, demand side as well, for the bulk electric system. So interconnected to the high voltage transmission system, but then also when aggregated, some resources that are on the distribution side, that there are sufficient numbers and quantities of these resources to meet near-term electric system reliability needs over basically a month ahead or year ahead, or potentially multi-year time frame. So this is kind of a near-term reliability planning proceeding. The current Great, so we're going to stay on that first slide for a bit, for the number 2. There we go, thank you. So the second of these proceedings is the integrated resource planning proceeding, and this is the basically the space where the CPUC oversees long-term resource planning. So this is more in the realm of 3 to 10, maybe 15 years for electric generation resource sufficiency over the long term. It's meant to be more of a planning exercise. There are different types of assumptions and ways of analyzing resource portfolios statewide, and again, over a longer time horizon. The integrated resource plan, as you may recall, is something that East Bay produces every other year as part of our kind of long-term strategic plan for what our portfolio needs are going to be over the long term, and how we start to procure and actually get resources to meet that long-term idea. The integrated resource plan, or the collection of resources on a statewide level that are identified through the CPUC's long-term planning process here, feed into the state's transmission planning process, where the California Independent System Operator decides which types of large high voltage transmission projects should be built in order to meet the expected new types of electric generation that are coming online over a 10, 15, sometimes 20-year horizon. So the integrated resource plan, with its long-term planning function, influences and impacts infrastructure development on the long term in the state and throughout the West. And then the next one here is the Renewable Portfolio Standard. This is a proceeding at the CPUC that administers or ensures that the load-serving entities like East Bay are meeting the energy demands for their customers using sufficient volumes of clean energy resources. And there's a standard of what types of clean energy resources are able to count in determining how much of our energy demand is met with clean resources. This is similar to the integrated resource plan in that it has a long-term planning horizon function, but it also has a somewhat near-term compliance focus where they're looking sort of in 3-year compliance periods to make sure that the amount of clean resources in a given LSC's portfolio are sufficient to meet the clean energy requirements over those particular compliance periods. Also worth noting is that the CPUC's Renewable Portfolio Standard proceeding looks to ensure that LSCs are meeting the statewide clean energy targets, but East Bay's clean energy targets are significantly higher, and we solve and we build our portfolio to meet the higher of those standards. So where our standards are higher, where we want more clean energy over time, we will exceed the requirements of the CPUC's Renewable Portfolio Standard. I'll pause and see if there are any questions on these 3 proceedings. There's a lot of content in here and I've not gotten into it, but I've given a little bit of a high-level description.
Dan, do you have any questions?
No, sir.
No, I think it's Dan.
Okay,
Oh,
Why don't you let them know that he's here?
we have member presenters with us also here.
okay, okay, does he have any questions?
No, I got here late.
No, my only question would be like, okay, integrated resource planning, would that be like, this is just general, would this be like, okay, we got to start planning because Diablo Canyon's going to go offline? What are we going to do to replace that shortfall?
Right, so the integrated resource plan is basically trying to figure out in 10 years, what resources do we need? So we anticipate what types of resources will still be around, like whether Diablo will be or won't be, like whether offshore wind will be or won't be available. And then we try to make it an informed estimation of what our portfolio ought to be at that point. And then we track basically from current to future, and then we try to kind of shape our mid and longer term resource procurement around this long-term planning activity. Does that make sense?
Okay, good, thank you. There's other questions, you can move on to the demand related.
Excellent. So Michael, if I could turn to you.
Sure. Can everybody hear me okay? Great. My name is Michael. I am a regulatory analyst here on the policy team, and I focus on demand side management here on our team. So to give a little background and differentiate between what John's talking about, a lot of the types of resources that are going into those 3 proceedings that he's working on, not all, but a lot, are large. They're what we call utility scale. They're several megawatts. They might be out in the desert somewhere. They're usually sited far away from customer demand, and the energy that they generate is brought to them via transmission and distribution lines. There's a growing trend in the energy transition to try and meet electricity, try to balance supply and demand, rather than building out more large-scale supply, which is what a lot of, like I said, those 3 resource portfolio related proceedings are working on. Trying to meet that through demand management. And that can look like many things. It can look like having a higher price during grid stress events to try to have customers sort of naturally respond to that price signal and consume less energy then. Or it could look like the adoption of some things we call distributed energy resources, or DERs. And that's what this proceeding listed here, high DER, is focused on. So the CPUC is anticipating a very high adoption rate of distributed energy resources. Those could look like solar and storage on your home rooftop. Those could look like electric vehicles that either charge from the grid or in some cases dispatch back to the grid once they're charged. It could even be something like a thermostat that's smart and reads sort of time varying price signals and adjusts just a few degrees here and there to try to optimize how much you're using and when you're using it. There's a lot of benefits to this. It could potentially help us avoid building out some distribution system infrastructure, some utility scale supply, but there's also some challenges. As it stands, there's a huge lack of distribution system infrastructure investments. We need a lot more to make sure that these DERs can interconnect to the grid, as well as new load can interconnect to the grid. If you bring a lot of these resources online on one circuit, for example, you might need substantial investments in demand side infrastructure, or excuse me, distribution infrastructure. So what we're doing in this proceeding is somewhat multifaceted. On one hand, I think it's good to just sort of keep an ear to the ground and understand what the trends are, how the CPUC is going about planning for a future with a lot of distributed resources. On the other hand, we're definitely concerned with how much distribution system infrastructure costs could rise, because those are passed through to our, even though we focus on generation service, that's passed on to our customers through PG&E's transmission and distribution charge. So we want to make sure that the investments that go into the distribution system are smart, they're prudent, and they're sufficient enough to meet new load and new DERs and all the new projects that we need to electrify. So I think that's about all I have in terms of a broad overview. I'll again pause for questions if anybody has any.
Yeah, it's not right. So
Any
I mean,
questions?
yes, I have a couple.
We go
Okay.
for it.
Do we get energy from Diablo? Okay. I thought he just talked about it. We should. Anyway, how about when you talk about these structures, could be like the carports at schools that they're putting in? Is that what you're talking about? The big solar panel carports at
Yeah.
all?
That's a great example of a distributed resource.
Okay, because I got ideas.
All right.
Okay, anything else?
Good for now.
Remember, right? Okay, let's move on.
So I think we have one more slide just on this topic, and then we'll be able to move on to the next agenda topic. Thank you. So these are some very simple deadlines for some of the proceedings that we've already discussed, just to give you a sense of the timing of how EBCE is engaging with these proceedings. So we have coming up in mid-July a forward-looking RPS procurement plan where we're showing the PUC the portfolio of resources that we have, and specifically clean energy resources to meet, again, the long-term clean energy targets for the state. And again, because East Bay's clean energy targets are higher, we're typically pretty well ahead of the state's objectives there. The next one here is that in early August, we have a couple filings to make before the PUC. We make a procurement compliance report in the long-term integrated resource plan proceeding, where we demonstrate that we are procuring the resources that we expect to need, again, for that long-term planning function. And then also at the beginning of August, we present a compliance report on our RPS procurement, our clean energy procurement. So again, there's sort of a forward-looking and a compliance function to that renewable proceeding. The last two here pertain to the resource adequacy, CPC's resource adequacy program. At the end of October, as is typical, we make a showing to the CPUC that we have sufficient resources for the coming year ahead. So in this case, for 2024, we also make, incidentally, month ahead showings. So we're making those showings to the PUC on a pretty high frequency, at 12 times per year. And then at the end of November this year, there's something unusual. We are making a practice showing to the CPUC because the resource adequacy framework, the way that the CPUC does near-term reliability analysis and showings is going to be changing. You may have heard about this in past briefings, but we're moving to a 24-hour slice of day framework for near-term reliability in the CPC's RA proceeding. So that late November showing is for a 2024 practice year for showing that we have sufficient resources over the course of the year. And then the true slice of day framework will be implemented for the 2025 RA year. And that ends our presentation if there aren't any other questions.
Do we have any questions? Okay, not hearing any. Well, this is pretty interesting. Looks like you have your work lined up for you the next few months.
Oh, yes.
Okay, John, Michael, thank you very much. Now to the next part, which is legislative update.
Second.
I can get us going here while Raisa pulls up the slideshow. Thanks for having me here. I'm Alec, the Principal Legislative Manager at EBCE. I lead our state legislative work and also our federal policy work. I'm going to give a quick rundown of our ledge process at EBC and then give you an update on some of the bill positions that you all voted on at the last board meeting in May. So we can just stay on this slide for a moment while I give some background. So the ledge team at EBC is made up of myself, Feby Bodiarto, federal lobbyists, the Townsend Public Affairs Group, and also our state lobbyist, Weideman Group. The ledge process and our principles are all captured and directed by the EBCE legislative program. This is actually something that you all voted through to update during the May meeting. We were just updating some titles and names, but nothing substantial. And as a reminder, the EBC legislative priorities are accelerate decarbonization, promote local development, and stabilize community choice. So our process here is that bills start coming out in January, and we're reviewing them and tracking them. And then we use our expertise. We talk with the other EBC teams, we talk to other CCAs, we talk to Cal CCA, and we review all these bills. We also keep a close eye on the budget process, which also starts in January and happens at the same time along the throughout all of spring. So on top of that, we have multiple meetings with our legislators. We have 10 state legislators, and we also meet with the governor's office, and we're hearing what their priorities are during this entire time. So with all this in mind, when a bill comes up that's important, that hits on our legislative principles, we bring it to the EDC board and we recommend a position, and that can be support if amended, oppose, or oppose unless amended. And then from there, we write a position paper. We advocate in many different ways. We work with Cal CCA, other CCAs, we work with our lobbyists, we have meetings. Sometimes we even utilize the board, and we were able to do that for AB 1373, which I'll talk about in a minute. But that's incredibly helpful. We can lean on you all as well. So let's go to the next slide, please. So this is an update of the legislative year. You can see it's very busy right now. In fact, yesterday, the state voted through its budget. It's always the June 15th deadline, and if you don't hit that deadline, our legislators don't get paid. So it's a nice little incentive for them to get this through in time. So they hit that. It's a tricky budget year because we're in a deficit, as you might have heard. But even with that in mind, this bill rejected a few cuts that the governor's office was proposing, including on EVs and building decarb. And it actually even added some funding to greenhouse gas reduction funds. That's the state fund. So what's next here on the budget process is we expect in the coming weeks a budget junior bill, which will flesh out a lot more details. We'll have more proposals, and we expect potentially some trailer bills throughout the budget bills throughout the summer. That's what we saw last year. And on the policy side of things, all the bills have moved out of their first house. If it started in the Assembly, now it's in the Senate. And right now it's we're going through hearings and policy committees. And all of this has to be finished up. Since it's the first year of a 2-year cycle, it goes until October 14th. That's the last day for the governor to sign and veto bills. So let's hop to the next slide, please. So as expected, it was a historic year for bills. I think we had almost 2,000, and not all of them are going to make it through, unfortunately. Fortunately for some, unfortunately for some that we took positions on. So what's causing this is there's a lot of bill ideas out there. There's some duplication. They kind of need to be streamlined down. It's also an especially tricky budget year, as I've mentioned, and the governor's been threatening to veto bills that add spending. So a lot of bills are left in the appropriations committees in their first house. On the interconnection front, which I'll talk about in a moment, we had a lot of pushback as expected as well from the IOUs to not make some of these bills pass through their first house either. So let me walk one bill at a time now, just to give you an update as to where it's standing. Our biggest focus really has been AB 1373. Fortunately, it did not get crammed into this June 15th budget as we thought it might. So thank you to the board for their outreach here. The CCA's really led a huge, impressive, coordinated effort the past 2 weeks to flag a lot of our very serious concerns about this bill. As a reminder, we were originally oppose unless amend. We had 3 issues with it. It would create a central procurement entity that would compete with CCAs. It added new resource adequacy penalties, and it would also increase the PUC's jurisdiction over our procurement. So 3 very big issues there. And if you also remember, it's a really complicated bill because there are 3 different venues where this bill might go through. It could go through as the governor's proposal through the budget. It could be the Senate budget's proposal going through the budget, or it could also be the Assembly policies 1373 proposal. So we're pushing our fixes in these 3 places. 1373 is the only thing in print. But we're making sure at the end of the day that what we're looking for will win out. We think eventually that it will go through the budget process either as a budget junior bill or as a trailer bill. So on the Assembly side, AB 1373 was amended, so much so that we actually moved to neutral. So we need to update the slide here. It fixed all 3 of the major issues, so we have no more concerns with that bill. The Senate is working on their budget proposal. It isn't out in print yet, but we've seen language. It fixes most of what we're concerned about, but it still has issues, leaving the door open for the IOUs, PG&E, to become a central procurement entity and to compete with us by procuring long lead time resources like wind, geothermal, hydro, storage. So we still need to work to narrow that language down. We hear the governor has amended its proposal. We haven't seen that yet, though, so we're really just going to keep working this issue. But I think we can expect for it to be resolved potentially by the end of this month. But I think we're headed in a good direction. So the other bill updates are going to be much shorter. We have AB 50, which is still active. That's a wood bill. This would put a shot clock on the IOUs for energization of new and upgraded load. It would also increase some transparency and reporting measures. It passed the Assembly, and now it's on to Senate Energy. AB 643 burn bill, anything that's crossed out is something that has not moved forward this year, and that potentially could come back as a 2-year bill next year, but not moving forward this year. This would have been a shot clock on DER interconnection, distributed energy resources like solar and storage on rooftops. It had some other provisions too. This was held in the Assembly appropriations. SB 83, Senator Wiener, this was also a shot clock on energization for new development, and it had some other provisions. This was held in Senate appropriations. SB 410 Becker, this put a shot clock on energization of new and upgraded load. This was passed in the Senate, and now it's on to Assembly Energy. Next slide, please. So we have our last 3 bills here. AB 557 HART, this would extend Brown Act video conferencing flexibilities for the EDC board and others. So that would be very helpful for our meetings. It was passed in the Assembly, and now it's on to Senate Judiciary. The last 2 bills are not moving forward this year. The first one creates an EV sharing program in affordable multifamily housing. This is SB 529 Gonzalez. It was held in Senate appropriations. And I forgot to mention, these are all supports that the board landed on in May for all these bills I'm going through, except the first one. An update on this one is this: there might be a federal bill this year from Representative Barragan doing the exact thing the state bill is trying to do. So we're going to keep a close eye there to see if that could be a potential venue. And then the last bill, SB 527 MIN, this would establish neighborhood zonal decarb pilot program. It was held in Senate appropriations. So we can go to our last slide. So we're going to, these are the same next steps that we presented during the May meeting. We're going to continue looking at new amendments, continue looking at language coming out on the budget, monitoring everything, and putting recommendations in front of the entire board whenever we see something that arises to that occasion. And then afterwards, we'll do the same outreach that I had highlighted in the first slide, including position letters and other advocacy efforts. And we'll work with CalCCA and others on these legislative efforts. So with that, I think that concludes the presentation, so I can pause for any questions.
Hey, does anybody have any questions? Okay, thank you for the update. And I'm glad to hear that that 1373 was amended. That's pretty good there. Good work.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, so now we are moving on to, where's it at? Oh, there we go. The EBCE name proposal.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. We'll go to the presentation. So I'm Annie Henderson, the Vice President of Marketing and Account Services. Nice to meet you. I've been formally introduced. I'll be doing the presentation along with my colleague Teresa McDermott. She's our head of brand. I want to start off first by just acknowledging that we've had an ad hoc committee, both of the board and our community advisory committee, who helped us work through this process. What we're showing you today is a new name proposal. This is not something that is typically done in the public sphere. Some public agencies have in fact, changed names, but generally you see this more in the private space. And then you don't do it through a series of public meetings and public engagement. So this has been very unique, and the ad hoc committee allowed us to sort of balance out what we needed to do sort of in private to protect any intellectual property, but also make sure that we're hearing, the thoughts and opinions and feedback of key stakeholders. So I want to acknowledge that Directors Patino and Wright were both on our ad hoc committee. So there'll be no drum roll for you. You already know the name, but Director Barrientos, we're excited to share this with you. And I also just wanted to share with you there, I don't know if you noticed, but there was a lot of press this week about an upcoming heavy duty truck charging depot that will be sited on a brownfield in Livermore. Wanted to thank you for the quote that you gave for the press release, but it was in the Independent, it was on thetrucker.com, which is great exposure because those are the people that we need to convert over from diesel. But it also got picked up by PR Newswire and Yahoo News. Popular Science did a piece on it, so it's getting some really great coverage, and I think it's showing the leadership of Livermore. Very excited for that. So glad to be able to tell you that person. What we'll present here today again is the brand name proposal. This is the second time we're presenting this in a public meeting. We did it about 2 weeks ago to our executive committee. It was generally well received. We got some good feedback in terms of, in the messaging that goes along with the new name, make sure that we are indicating and clear that we are a public agency. And then some other comments that I'll hold off on until we get further into our deck. So with that, and I'll just note, and it is also in the deck, you're welcome to turn the page. We'll also be presenting this to our community advisory committee next Tuesday, and then taking it to the board, assuming that all goes well here, on Wednesday, where we'll ask the board to vote on potentially approving the name.
Right.
So with that, I'll turn it over to Teresa.
Great. Thank you. And I will echo what Annie said. Thank yous to Director Patino and Dr. Wright for sticking with us through this process and guiding us along the way. And nice to meet you, Director Barrientos. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time today, just kind of, you can go to the next slide, please, Lisa. Thank you. It's kind of a recap of where we've been so far. So like the background and rationale for why we, believe now is the right time to be evolving our brand and especially our name. Some data-driven insights we have that kind of support that and help us think about how we would move forward should it be approved. A recap of the stakeholder engagement we've done that Annie just alluded to, and then I'll talk about the naming process itself and the name. So you can go forward. Thank you. Next one.
Oh, okay.
Well, this is a peek. This is a peek. There we go. All right. It's a peek at a timeline that kind of is an overview of our brand identity since the inception of the agency. And as you can see, the evolution of the logos there, we've kind of made tweaks and adjustments as we've gone along, but we haven't ever done kind of a full-scale overhaul, which makes sense. But now we are at this point where you see in 2022 where we're expanding kind of the way we think of the agency to not only be like a load serving entity, but also to be this programs marketing engine, a place where we're trying to drive adoption and engage our constituents to really think and adopt electrification and efficiency things. So that we need a brand that kind of is evolving along with us to support, this new aspect of what we want to do. And of course, in 2025, we're looking forward to bringing Stockton fully on as part of our service. So that's just kind of like the overall trajectory. And I'll just, over the next few slides, drill a little bit deeper into kind of what this history means and, how it kind of points to this evolution we're ready to make. Go ahead and raise the things. Super. So this is an image of a brochure that was circulated right when the agency started. And, it was like a really great tool for doing what needed to be done back then 5 years ago, right? Even fewer people knew what a CCA was. And they, certainly weren't used to the notion of energy choice. And when we started, right, we were combating a lot of, what is this? EVC is a scam. I don't understand this. Like, what's this going to mean to my bill? So we had these marketing tools that were just very, very literal and instructive. You can go on, please. And we had a brand expression that supported that kind of those motions of educating people and building trust. So you can see the images on the right are our website alongside the websites of lots of other entities kind of in the space, both other CCAs and IOUs. And well, I think ours is the nicest and cleanest looking. It is definitely kind of in that space, right? You wouldn't doubt that you're in the, in the territory of a utility or something like that, which is exactly what we wanted, right? We wanted people to feel like they were in the right place. And we don't not want them to feel in the right place going forward, but we developed and crafted this identity and like the way we talk about ourselves in very self-referential educational language to serve the purpose of just establishing a service. So you can go on to the next one. And great news is, like, we've been successful, right? I'm sure you guys are all familiar with a lot of these good results, but we're doing what we said we were going to do. We're on track to meet our clean energy goals. We are returning funds to the community, all good things. It's working. So we're feeling great about that. We can go on to the next slide, which leads us to where we are today, right? We are in this and point now. So we want to move from solely like supplying demand for clean energy to also helping to create demand for electrified solutions and efficiency, right? So helping people think about adopting things like EVs or switching the way they cook to induction. And that's great. We have programs that do that. And we understand those motions. We've built a lot of capacity around that. But we've seen that that maybe when we're meeting our customers here and we're asking them to take these more kind of consumer type behaviors, right? We're asking them not to do something that's very transactional, like buy cheaper energy, but we're asking them to do something that's more emotional, more consumer oriented. We're asking them to change the way they cook. That is something that maybe they have a harder time hearing from us because they're like, hey, you're a utility. Why would I listen to you about how to cook my food and feed my family? And so we're realizing that if we want to influence people in these more consumer and emotional decisions, we need to have a brand that feels more consumer oriented, a little bit more emotional and resonant and evocative. So while we're never going to lose sight of the supply side of things, we want to do that and be able to talk to people in a more emotional and resonant way about the demand side as well. So go ahead. So that's kind of like can you just give me 1 sec? That's the kind of the strategic imperative, right? For why we believe now is the right time to evolve the brand. We do have some insights that helped us understand that there is a geographic imperative too, and you can go to the next slide now. Thank you. So as we're ramping up to bring Stockton into our service, we wanted to understand our constituents out there a bit better, and we conducted some research to ask them about lots of different things, in terms of what are their priorities and what types of programs are they interested in, and how familiar were they with their different options and everything like that. But among the things we talked to them about was the name itself. If we asked them, if a company called East Bay Community Energy was going to be out here, serving you, how would that land with you? And the overwhelming result we got back was, I don't think I'm part of the East Bay, so why would East Bay Community Energy be serving me? And kind of even more than that, in some instances, we got not just like, I don't understand why East Bay Community Energy would serve me, I'm not part of the East Bay. We also got like, I don't like the East Bay. Like the East Bay is expensive. I don't share the values with people in the East Bay. So all of that kind of told us, that there was just this headwind to trying to enter service there with the name that we have. And so since we have the time and the opportunity and the strategic imperative, we've coupled those two things together, and it tells us, absolutely we need to evolve our brand, but not only that, part of that evolution needs to be our name as well. So you can go on to the next slide. Thanks. So this is a different set of data that we're using to kind of help us think about, what are the potential downsides are there, to changing our name. And this slide depicts our unaided brand awareness, current unaided brand awareness over time. So we've been asking folks, hey, PG&E manages the electricity system, but you also have the option to get clean energy from another entity. Do you know who it is? And by the way, these people are customers, right? We're asking our customers. And so you can see over time, only about 22% of the people who have been surveyed are able to say, I know that that's East Bay Community Energy. Another good chunk of them are guessing wrong. And the bulk of them are just saying like, I have no idea, right? So while we, 22% unaided awareness is not nothing. It is also not sort of such a penetration of understanding around East Bay Community Energy that we don't think that we can kind of start from that level and build going forward if we were to change our name. So we are kind of going forward with that knowledge in mind. You can go to the next slide, please. Thanks. So that's the background. That's why, how we got here and why we believe now is the right time to do this evolution. And this is just a little bit of information about, kind of how we've been bringing everybody along in this process. You can go to the next slide. Thanks, Teresa. So a brand evolution and a refresh and kind of moving to more of a brand that's going to help with consumer engagement has been a topic of discussion with the board and everything for a long time now, over a year, well before I joined EVCE. So this is, like the idea of this is not new. And now it's great that we've been taking these kind of like affirmative steps to kind of move that idea forward, and we're ready to really start putting the rubber to the road. So you can go to the next slide. So as we mentioned before, as we've gotten sort of more kind of in the real stuff with this, we've had ad hoc committees of the board and the CAC. We've also been along the way engaging our Muni Pals, which are the municipal employees of your cities, to bring them along with this and help understand what, should we move forward with this, kind of what sort of support they would need to roll it out, and have them help us shape this a bit. We have been talking with I already said Muni Pals, but I guess just to say, we've also engaged this exec-com and had a couple of presentations with the full board. So we've been trying, as Andy said, to balance the need to do some of this stuff quietly, but also be as open as we possibly can. You can go to the next slide.
I just want to share some late breaking news. Dan just told me that survey that we do of the unaided awareness about EVCE, do you know who serves your electricity power? That was like 22% each time. We are 8 survey respondents away from completing it. So we're at 392 of 400. And right now that awareness is at 21.2.
Wow.
So it's really holding steady.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, we're conducting the latest. We do that survey about every 6 months to track a number of things. And so you meant Dan Lieberman, our colleague,
Yes.
not Director Wright.
No,
I was
not
confused.
Director
I was like, how does Director Wright know that?
I had many talents.
Got it.
All right.
All right. So
We
good to
now
know.
resume the
I mean,
regular
that's,
schedule.
yeah, exactly. That gives you a lot of confidence that like that's about where we're at. 22% of, of our constituents, our customers are aware that they're our customers. Not nothing, but so anyway, as we have gotten kind of further along in this process, and we're at this point now where we're asking for support to kind of evolve our name. We did present, as Andy said, we presented this to the executive committee. We'll talk a little bit about the feedback we got there in the next couple of slides. We're here today. We're going to be speaking with the CAC next week, right before the board meeting, and then we will come to the full board with the request for approval of this next week. And we promise not to do the full presentation unless anybody asks us to. So you can go on to the next slide. This is just pulling back a little bit, maybe jumping ahead of myself, but assuming this is approved, this is a high level overview of the way we would roll out the overall evolved brand. And you don't need to like really soak any of this in right now. The message that you should take away from this is we're going to be very kind of planful and systematic about this, and nothing's changing on June 22nd, right? So we would use the time between now and August to really start, building out all the materials we need and solidifying plans and things like that. September, we would be educating and enabling people. So working with your staffs to make sure that they have all the tools they need to respond to any constituent questions and things like that, and getting all our systems updated, things like that. And then between October and December, we would be doing what we call kind of a soft launch, where we're just making sure that things are getting out there. We're going to start using the name, but we're not going to press heavily on it, and kind of get everybody used to it, but and make sure that everything's working nicely. And then in the new year, we would do a very kind of heavy above the line push. We would be investing in aggressive advertising and things like that to really raise awareness and help people understand that East Bay Community Energy is now the new company name, Energy, and make sure we're not leaving anybody behind, but just growing that awareness. And then eventually we would be doing a lot of measurement and tracking and awareness. And once we know that kind of we have from that analysis, know that we have a good traction, we would kind of move into a more steady state. So that's a high level. You'll hear a lot more from us, when and if this is approved, about the actual process. You can go on to the next slide. And this is just an overview of who our ad hoc committee members were, who served on both of those committees of the board and the CAC. Thank you again, Directors Patino and Wright. And you can get, and this is just a short summary of the feedback that we've had kind of as we presented this name. So our ad hoc committee members have lent their support for it. We had good support from the exec committee here 2 weeks ago. They did give us some direction that, even though we're keeping the idea of community energy in the name, that they want to make sure that we are very, very explicit in our messaging around rolling it out, that we don't lose sight of community energy, that we're very clear that we're a public energy provider, and that we're not personifying the name, which will make a bit more sense when we talk about the name itself. So we can go forward right now. So, okay, naming process itself. Go ahead and, yep. So this is, I won't kind of go into this again, lots of words, but just to say, we started with a lot of potential names, and through an iterative and kind of involving process, we've narrowed them down to our recommended name. So I will not go into kind of all the steps there. We'll allude to them on the future slides. You can go to the next slide. Perfect. So as we got into this, we kind of needed to sort of cull the universe of everything that was potentially possible down to what we were interested in. And one of the things we looked at was the environment we're in, and it is like an acronym heavy environment. And so we know, I didn't touch on it on the earlier slide from the Stockton research, but we got a lot of feedback about people just don't like acronyms, right? If they don't, especially if they don't know what the letters themselves mean, it's just very alienating and confusing, and definitely the opposite of like emotional and warm, which was kind of an inviting, what we're looking for. So when we looked at the kind of landscape of acronyms, we thought, okay, we want to do whatever we can do to step away from an acronym, if that's possible. You can go to the next slide. That said, we don't want to lose sight of who we are and who we serve. And so we started, very early on, we knew that whatever name we wanted to adopt, it had to work well with community energy, because we were going to keep that descriptive phrase as part of our name. So the structure there of community energy, new name community energy, was something we've looked at all along. You can go on to the next slide. And then we also came up with these other 9 criteria, just guardrails for thinking about things, and you don't have to go through all of them, but key for us were that easy to say, memorable, evocative, somehow kind of like provides a link to what we do and who we serve and things like that. So there's a lot of different vectors to look at this, but we wanted it to be memorable, we wanted it to be easy to say, and we wanted it to not lose sight of community energy. You can go forward there.
The last one is critical, available.
Oh yes, well,
legally.
and it had to be legally available and all that good stuff, which knocked out a lot of great options, but that's okay. We're happy where we landed. So this is just pulling back even further, just to kind of orient you in, in terms of like, of all the different kinds of names you could possibly have, where we've landed. So there's some types of names that are, very, very literal and descriptive, like in this chart, American Airlines. And then there are some that are completely abstract, Apple, but for a computer, not a fruit, right? And then there's some that are in the middle of this evocative space. They kind of point to what they do or who they're for, but they're a little bit more kind of intriguing. So you can go to the next slide. And we did a lot of work to kind of test names in this grid and see what made sense. And you can see, like, if you were to put our name in the current space, it would be in that lower left corner of very descriptive, very real world. And what we found was that the names that seemed right for us were like evocative names. And so these names that are on this chart are just kind of made up names that we were playing with in illustrative, but where we landed was in an evocative name that is kind of indicative of what we do, but not fully literal and definitely not abstract. You can go to the next slide. So now we'll talk about the name itself. One more wind up slide after this, you can go on. And just, we wanted to say that, like, as Annie alluded to, being available is a very non-trivial thing for the name. And so the name that we'll present to you, it has been fully cleared for trademark clearance. We've actually submitted a kind of placeholder trademark registration. Should it be approved, we can action that. So we would protect our rights to use that name. We've reserved social media handles and URLs. We have taken it through a cultural and linguistic check. So we've had native speakers of each of the most frequently spoken languages in our service territory look at the name both for pronunciation and meaning and things like that, and come back to us and assure us that there aren't any surprises, like any negative surprises with the names. So we feel very, like comfortable that should the name be approved, that it's ready for us to use, it's appropriate, it's only going to mean positive things for us. You can go on to the next slide. So now we've should have done the drum roll. I forgot. Yeah, exactly. So our proposed name is Ava Community Energy. You can go to the next slide. So Ava is a shortened form of Alameda County to the Valley, right? So it's this really, it does both things we wanted, right? It kind of provides this lovely story for us to tell about our expanded service territory and being very inclusive of, who we serve now, who we're serving in the future, and who we might even serve more of in the future, right? But when we say it, Ava, it's just short, it's memorable, it's warm. There is a humanness to it, but that's when we talked about making sure we don't personify things. So we want to kind of humanize the brand, but not personify it. So we would never have like a lovely lady in our ads saying, "Hi, I'm Ava," right? We're not gonna, kind of go there. It's not meant to be kind of a personification. It's meant to be a short, evocative, warm brand name that gives us a very easy story to tell about who we serve. Your niece is named, so it's a great name,
Love
right?
it.
Like, it's a great name.
My daughter is Alma, and I was pushing for that for a little bit, but I lost out.
So you can go on to the next slide, and just so you can hear how it sounds, how it lands. You can imagine somebody saying, East Bay Community Energy is now Ava, or we'd like to thank Ava Community Energy for being the climate justice sponsor of the Oakland Routes. The next speaker is from Ava Community Energy, serving Alameda County to the Central Valley. This is how it might look, in just a mocked up ad here. Ava Community Energy. Ava is powering better living with clean, affordable energy. You want the next slide? In a more business-oriented kind of piece, Ava is powering better business with clean, affordable energy. Ava Community Energy. So that is it, and we're looking forward to any feedback that you have.
What?
Yeah, well, it's not news to them, but they also can give feedback if they want.
Well, let me start with Director Barrientos, since Dan and I have gone through numerous meetings on this. Any ideas or thoughts, Director Barrientos?
Well, I appreciate the work you put into it. And so I'm okay with it,
Great.
Make sure to get your niece something.
Well, yeah,
They love
we will.
I'd be shopping. Oh, no.
Okay, Director Wright?
I can tell you it was a grueling process to get to this point. And I can tell you it is truly the most reasonable of all of our final options. You know, I love the Alameda to the Valley connection of the word. You know, I can use that to sell it, you know, to people for the most part.
Yeah, I totally agree. You know, I think, and I might have even mentioned it in one of our meetings, you know, A for Alameda, then VA for Valley, you know, we could actually, even though we're trying to stay away from acronyms, we could make that connection. It was a lot of meetings, and we started out with some bow wows, and we just moved over to then some of them that we liked, we just, when we did a legal search, we couldn't.
Yeah.
We couldn't take them. So yeah, thank you for being patient with us, to all the staff that worked with us. It's hard to get a bunch of us to agree, and you know, we all have our opinions, our likes, our dislikes, and this is where we're at. I'm very proud of the work we did, and you know, and I'm sure we're going to have some naysayers, but you know, next time you guys sit on these long meetings, we went through. But
This is really bad now.
Tried to make
Yes,
them forget.
yes, no, you guys were total champs. I know it's not something that you do as a public
Yeah.
official all the time, is rename agencies. It's a little bit strange. And you had a lot of forbearance with us, and we really thank you for the guidance and getting us to a place that feels, you know, like it does both things. It provides a nice story to tell, but also kind of provides that more emotional and consumer facing brand that's going to help us really, you know, just engage people and bring them into the programs and have them taking more advantage of all the things that we have to offer them.
and thank you for guiding us, because I think we'd still be debating the names right now if it was up to us. You know, I've been through 3 rebrandings in my professional career. But never a name change. So a name change is a totally separate thing there. Branding, yes, you have to, you know, you have to come up with the scheme, you know, what are the colors, what's what's everything going to look like, you know, get everybody to buy in on staff. But this is totally different. This is a total renaming. So I applaud you on staff for being patient with us, for guiding us, and everybody on the ad hoc committee, just, you know, really hanging in there. So is there anything else? Okay. So is that it for the name proposal?
It is. I mean, I could make you go through another meeting if you wanted.
Oh, no, we're okay. I have plenty to do today. So this is just informational. It will be coming to the full board later in the week, next week.
Yes.
So Dan and I will have to listen to it again, and it's okay though. We're getting there. Do we have any committee member and staff announcements?
No, but I do have to say they're still don't have a quorum, so the minutes will probably move to the next meeting.
We'll roll them over till October. That's okay. So we'll have to approve 2 sets of minutes next time. I know it's difficult around this time. We have budgets that are due right now. We just approved our waste and recycling fees. So we're actually meeting every week this month. So I know how hard it is to get people to get on all the other meetings. Yeah. So usually we only meet twice a month. So okay, well, if that's it, just want to say, everybody enjoy your weekend, and see you next time. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you all.